Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we got episode 119 today. Wow.
119, the opposite of an emergency.
That's right. So episode 119 today, and today we're going to talk about what? Crossing the streams.
Crossing the streams. Now, that's a Ghostbusters reference. And when they were hunting Slimer down, the whole point was, you're okay if you don't cross the streams. And so when cross the streams, bad things happen. Sigourney Weaver turns evil.
She turns into the Key Master.
That's right. Rick Moranis never had it so good.
No.
I
still, my favorite line in that movie was, okay, who brought the dog?
But in this case, we're talking about cross-pollination of years, normalization, cross-era play.
Yeah, like a team from different seasons, different decades, different eras, the whole bit. Kind of continuing on our conversation that we had with Matt and Craig from Pocket Pennant Run.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, they got their new physical product. They thought it was going to last for a while. Gone in 5 days.
Yeah.
The sequel to Gone in 60 Seconds. Gone in 5 days.
I might even been quicker than that because they posted, hey, we got some stuff in stock. And then people are like, it said you're out of stock. It's like, yeah, we're out of stock again. So good for those guys there that their game is
yes.
Flying off the shelves, so to speak. It's fun. We'll talk about a little bit of that in here as well.
Yeah.
In episode 119. Ways to get a hold of us. Digitaltodice.com is the website. That's where we park all the shows over on Spreaker. And you can listen to the show on Spreaker or on my YouTube channel, either or any of your favorite podcast preferences. And I think some people, once in a while, Ron and I will sit down and go through where people are listening just so we have an idea. And there's still one or two people that listen on Zune, which has been discontinued for 10 years. But, you know, if you're listening on Zune, reach out to us. We'd like to know who you are listening on Zune there.
I bought an MP3 player once, the non-iPod version. And one of them had the option for Zune. And I remember talking to the manager at FYE. You know those, don't you? Yep. And he says, don't even bother. Buy this instead. So it was a SanDisk or whatever. Back when 16 gig was a really big, hairy deal. Yeah. And so yes, even I avoided Zune.
Yeah, I remember that back in the day. Let's see. Our text line, 978-751-DICE, 978-751-3423, if you'd like to chat with us via text. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/group/digital2dice. So, why don't we get into, let's talk, we got through the holiday season a little bit. Now we're in the cold season.
Ooh, is it ever cold?
You are a lot colder than I was last night, but that was still our coldest night. They were canceling schools around here. It was so cold. And I think it's a combination of the cold and teachers being out with, the whole virus thing.
You made the good point. And, calling, okay, so we need help in 3rd and 5th grade. And someone's going, no, I'm under my blanket. I'm good. And
that's kind of what we canceled hockey last night. And it was kind of a combination of the two. Is the last few weeks we've had between 20 and 25 people out over the last couple of weeks. Out of that's 8 teams worth. We have 8 teams, and so you're missing 20 guys or 25 guys. That's still 20 or 30% of your league. And it just, if I'm going into the night down that many guys, and then it's cold on top of it, and how many people are just going to stay home in the cold? Like, I could have a real disaster on my hands. And myself, I was like, if I don't want to be at the rink for 5 hours in the cold myself. It was 3 degrees last night, by the way.
It was -3 here.
Yeah, and I just said, just one of these things where just if this many people are out, and I know there's going to be others that don't show, I don't know if we're having enough to play. I'm going to probably be stuck on the court all night, sweating and in the cold, and that's when I get sick. And I was like, nah, let's just call it a night. So I ended up doing a live baseball chat last night on my YouTube channel, talking about all the baseball games I'm playing, and I'll get into those and what we're playing there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when I looked down, it was 2 degrees, and I was like, man, I'd be getting out of the rink all all sweaty in 2-degree weather, and it takes me a while to pack up my truck and then unpack it, and I could just see myself getting.
Oh, you just get so cold.
Yeah, I could see myself getting real sick from that. So I'm kind of glad I called it off last night. But yeah,
I think that was smart. So I got a question. I got a trivia question for you.
Okay.
About speaking of cold, generally, what time of day is considered the coldest?
Oh boy, I would consider the dead of night usually the coldest, 3, 4 in the morning.
And you'd be wrong. It generally is the last half hour before local sunrise.
So closer to 6 or something like that.
This time of year in Vermont, between 6:30 and 7.
I knew it was late, like because I look at my phone and I'll check the hourly temperature, and you can see it drop and then come back up in the morning. So I knew it was the dead of night is usually when it's really the coldest, because the coldest, darkest before the dawn, I guess.
About to say that actually yesterday, because we had a high of 5 at 12:23 a.m. It was 5 degrees, and the low came at 9:22 in the morning, which is unusual for it to be that late. We hit 6 below here in Burlington, and that doesn't happen that often.
It is funny when that happens, when you got a really, really cold day, and then you look in the middle of the night, and it's supposed to warm up by 10 or 15 degrees overnight. You're like, wow, it's going to be cold. It's going to be warmer at 2 in the morning than it is at 4 in the afternoon.
I went out for my walk in the hall this morning. My wife got dressed, and it was dark. Cloudy dark, and you knew then it was warming up, because at least up here in the hinter regions of the United States, the heat escapes if there's nothing to hold it in. And so when the cloud cover comes back, it's enough of a thermal blanket to hold the quote unquote heat in. So if it's cloudy, this time of year it's a good 10 degrees warmer than it would be if it's not.
So it's been cold. It's been fun to sit in and be in the cold and play some games. So what have you been playing there, Mr. Ron?
Let's see. Started my 1985 baseball replay. Having a good time with that. We featured, with the Astros and the Dodgers yesterday. I think we have done, in the first 7 games, we've done 12 different teams. So everyone's getting their shot early. We haven't done the Yankees yet. That may or may not be this week. So that's off to a good start using the 2022 version of Action PC Baseball. Kind of cold over the weekend, so I still have one more regular season football game to play. I've been playing Strat basketball on the computer. 85, 86. I got to go buy 79, 80, and I'll probably restart with that. And I'm loving it. I'm not a huge basketball fan, Celtics fan growing up. My mother would say, the Red Sox did it again, Ron. They didn't win. So what gets you through? And I said, well, the Celtics are God's answer for us having to survive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Down here in New England, when we went through those spells of the Patriots and the Bruins and the Red Sox being really bad, the Celtics, we won a championship or 2. At least we're celebrating.
And yeah, that's right. And she was a Laker fan, so that made it all the better when they would beat Kareem and Magic. Yeah. Oh yeah. Although now you just you don't hate anybody. But for whatever reason, and I can't really put a finger on it, because you just did a video on house mods and rules, and on the Strat PC games you can kind of do house rules to a degree, so it's not just straight up.
That was kind of the point of the video, is that the cards and dice is wide open, but the PC stuff, you're limited to what they will let you change.
But there's one thing in Strat that I do that is a pure homebrew mod, and that is shut off the fatigue. Mm-hmm. Because it's my firm belief that cards and dice don't get tired. Now, Strat will tell you before every game how much a player is being overused or underused, so that's a good guide. You want to be close. But for instance, if I didn't know this, here's how little I knew about that era of basketball. In 85, 86, which you're doing on PC Replay when you pull it out again, Kevin McHale missed 14 games. And so one of the things that we've talked about before is, how do you get Kevin McHale, how do you know which ones to rest him for? Well, you rest him against every last place team. You want him against the Sixers and the Lakers and all that.
Right.
And so Strat will try to bench his tushy for 14 games. And I try to do that. And the reason why I let them just do it when they want to bench him is that on the nights where that he's down, they wouldn't have limited Scott Wedman or Bill Walton to 18 to 20 minutes like they normally got when they were on the bench. And Action PC basketball, as good as it is, this isn't, crapping on one game while pumping up another, really, I think has a hard time compensating for when a starter is out, giving the bench player enough minutes without being absolutely exhausted. I'm sorry, these NBA players have always been among the most fit of any professional athlete. You run up and down a court 30 yards at a jog for 2.5 hours, and tell me how you feel. Just because they weren't playing an awful lot of minutes doesn't mean that they weren't in shape. Anyway, and so because I don't play with that, I can still get the minutes kind of right, or am forced to if someone gets into foul trouble, such as Kevin McHale, to get the minutes and not have to worry about that. And it just gives it there are times where the Celtics will struggle when they shouldn't be, but that kind of goes in any game. If you sat and watched every game of a season, and how many of us outside of football, if you ever watched an entire Bruins season from the first puck drop in October, you can't do that.
No, you can't. Yeah.
You can't do that. Even in my Super Red Sox days of radio and that, I might have caught 100 games a year, and that's a lot. That's a lot of time to be spending with that. But you get other things and stuff. So when you sit there and coach every game, you're going to see the warts and all that. And I think for me, because it gives coaching that much there, and when that Celtic team clicks, does it ever click? And because when you're in the middle of something and you're not saying, oh, wait, I'm on an 8-0 run, isn't it? You just kind of experience it. And for me, I'm not saying that it's the best game for everybody, but man, have I grown attached to that. And I didn't think I'd ever grow attached to any basketball game that you'd pay for. I played above the rim, the free Wayne Ponywas Excel spreadsheet game, and that's...
You've been enjoying that basketball, because when we chat offline, you're like, wow, I just played this basketball game and I'm in the third quarter and you wouldn't believe what's happening. And you're really into it.
It really is fun. And the key to all this is fun, is having fun. And so when you get upset, I swear a lot when I don't stream on a game, especially if Larry Bird misses a free throw, because Larry would never miss a free throw. And I looked at his stats. It's like, no, they're completely online. He should be missing 8 out of 100. And that's about what he's missing. And so when he doesn't get that role, again, the one thing that I've embraced more doing this show is the open engine, the card and dice, going from digital to dice. Let's see, what else have I been playing? I think gems. Trying to teach myself chess. Any good advice from you on you out there and how to learn it, I would greatly appreciate it, because I got to be really awake. I got checkmated in 4 moves the other day.
It's all about patience in that game, because you really got to look. If you're just playing another person like yourself, then you can just play and have fun. But when you're playing people that know the game, it's their thing. You make one move and they're already planning out the next 9. Like if I do
That's
this,
what
when you do
intrigues me about it.
But it's almost too robotic to me when I see people play it and they can do that in 4 moves, because it's so, like I said, robotic and automatic that I wouldn't. I'm too impatient. I just like to play and move my pieces. And it's the same way with golf. When I play real golf, I get impatient. I don't want to take 5 minutes to line up my shot. I want to hit, and I want to hit again. I want to hit again. And
you must have loved this weekend's tournament. 31 under won it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. What was that miniature
that's
golf?
Way too easy. It was the Tournament of Champions down in Hawaii.
Yeah. There's got to be some online chess things that you can find.
Yeah, chess.com.
Okay.
I paid for the full year for that. And so what checkmated me in 4 moves was one of their bots. Uncle Ron was not happy.
Yeah.
But again, patience and understanding, and it's a game that you can't. If your mind kind of drifts, because I'm like you, I rarely, if I'm playing a card and dice game, I'll start it, but as with you, the wife will want something. I'll check the weather.
Yeah.
You and I chat back and forth. It's not something, especially the hockey and basketball, which take about an hour for me to do anyway. I know I'm going to just do it in spits and starts, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting down on the chessboard, you are paying attention until you're done, and that's something I need to work on.
Yeah, you gotta stick with it. I get that. Anything else you've been playing?
I'm trying to think. No, there's a new. It has been advertised. There's a new patch for Legends of Boxing. We're up to 1006, and I have taken Pocket Pennant Run. We'll talk a bit about that for a spin. I like it. I really do. Okay. What they've done is come up with a magnificent game. And at some point I will sit down and do. Well, I think actually that's the reason for the topic of today's show. I think was because we were talking about that. Right. So I guess that's about it. My Strat Red Sox replay. It's the Yankees at Yankee Stadium next, and so I don't want to do that. I'm looking to relax. I don't really want to face the Yankees. My 75-76 Islanders. The next game is against the Philadelphia Flyers at the Spectrum. Ooh. Oh, I really don't want to do that. Okay, nope, that's going to be, I got to pay attention to that. Basketball, your next game? Yeah. 76ers at the Spectrum.
Yeah, I was going to say Sixers at the Spectrum, forget it.
And so it's like, okay, so kind of like I'm eager to move on with them. It's like, just
yeah, you got some tough ones coming up. Yeah, I hear you.
So that's why they haven't. So what about you, my friend?
I've been really on a baseball kick here in the coldest part of January, doing the Pocket Pennant Run myself. I'm now in the World Series, and if you remember, the Yankees swept the Royals and the Astros swept the Phillies. So I got the Yankees and the Astros going at it in my 1980 World Series replay. And the series has gone back and forth. I think they're taking turns winning games. And Game 5 at Yankee Stadium, the Astros blew them out 8-0. They take a 3-2 lead going back to Houston for Game 6. Really, really enjoying the simplicity and ease of play.
Would have been a pretty good World Series. Houston was going to give whoever they got a run. And Philly just turned out to a better team. And the Yankees were 100-game winners. They were 103-game winners.
Yep. No, it's funny how that both teams were swept their way into the finals that lost their actual series in real life. But I've been having a heck of a time in this game. Oh, my gosh. It's just playing it.
I'm loving it. Loving it.
I love how the software can print out the rosters for you with all the ratings, and you don't even need the team cards anymore. The software does it all. It saves you so much time and so much writing. It's very versatile how they do that. So I've been playing that. And then I decided I said, something, I'm playing this baseball game. I'm in a baseball mood. I'm going to play a bunch of baseball games that I have. And I ended up pulling out Strat. I played Strat Basic. I played, what was the other one I played?
I did APA last night.
I did APA. I pulled out my APA baseball, and I haven't played that in about a year and a half. And I had this 78 season. That's the one that I have. So I played APA Basic with a 78 season. And holy cow. Oh, and I also played Inside Pitch on the computer. So I decided that I was going to play a bunch of baseball games and compare them all.
You have been banned from the Mike Parrott fan club after that game of history of baseball.
No, that was Inside Pitch.
Oh, Inside Pitch.
Yeah, yes. Inside Pitch on the computer.
So explain that and explain why Mike Parrott has you on his dartboard.
So I crawled into bed on a cold night, and I said, let me just pull out the computer. I'm going to play a quick game, Inside Pitch. I haven't played it in a while. And in that game, if you do an as-play game, it sets up the rosters for you. It just saves a ton of time. So I opened up 1980, and I just looked at the opening day, and it was Toronto at Seattle. I said, fine, I'll just play that one, right? So I'm just sitting in bed playing it. And I forget who was pitching for Toronto, but it was Parrott was pitching for Seattle. The top of the first, Toronto gets 8 runs in the top of the first. They just nailed it. And I think I was playing it mostly correct. I could have made a mistake here or there because that's a very, very complex baseball game, even on the PC. And he got lit up for 8. And I kept him in. I was like, I don't want to take my opening pitcher out in the first inning. I says, he'll settle down eventually. And he did. He settled down in the second. And then in the third, he got racked. So I ended up taking him out in the third, putting somebody else, and Toronto gets 9 in the third. So it's 17-3 or something like that at this point. And it was just like, wow. And I think
Argos got that field goal over the Seahawks, yeah.
I think it was the game was taking so long to play after 3 innings that I actually saved the game and went to bed because I was getting tired. Because the game should be over by now. How many batters have I seen to get 17 runs in 3 innings? It was quite the game. I'd never seen anything like that. And so I ended up finishing it up, and I forget what the final score was. It was probably something like 19-5 or something like that. But I put it all up on Facebook. But it was a nutty game of inside pitch.
You'll have them.
Yeah. So I did that. So I played, and then I played APA Go because I was looking into because I played the APA. I played Boston, Detroit, 78 because I only have the 78 season. I have the older cards. And it was kind of fun. Red Sox, Remy doubled and Rice singled them home, so the Sox took a 1-0 lead. John Walkenfuss of Detroit hit a 2-run home run to put the Tigers up, and that's basically all the runs they would get until they got a stray run in the ninth. But the Sox ended up winning that one 5-3. 4 errors on the Tigers in that one. 2 by the shortstop Wagner.
Yeah.
And then third base had an error, which was Rodriguez.
They would get some guy by the name of Trammell who would be a mainstay in that position
and also
for a long time.
The pitcher had an error, too. But it was fun. Holy cow. I forgot how fun APA Baseball Basic was. I tell you, between the Pocket Pennant and the Strat Basic and the APA Basic, boy, those games just move right along.
Yeah, no.
And really enjoyed that. Yeah. Really did. And to a point where I did a whole video late last night on baseball games. And I said, these are the games I played in the last week or so, including Pine Tar and whatever. And I went over everything. And I ended up including all the games I have for baseball, but within reason. I mean, the quicker play games I didn't count or whatever. But all the major baseball games, Mogul, OOTP, On Deck Baseball, you name it. I talked about it for a few minutes last night, and it was just fun, kind of comparing and contrasting. And when I was done, I didn't have a favorite because they all did something a little different, and they all did something that bugged me as well. I mean, there's a couple things about, as much as I really enjoyed the APA baseball, there's a couple things that I was missing. And as much as I really enjoyed Strat and Pocket Pennant, there was a couple little things I was missing. But then when I tried to play a more advanced game, like a payoff pitch, which I played, I realized, whoa, maybe I'm enjoying the simplicity of these games rather than the detail.
For your the games you mentioned, APA, Strat Basic, Pocket Pennant Run, are all-star lineup baseball, are all games that I would use to teach someone who was interested in learning about baseball games. They're simple enough, and that's not a criticism. They're simple enough that you don't get bogged down into the baseball-y strategy part of the game. You just play the game, read the results, having a good time. But if there's plenty of other options. There's there's a master game for APA. There's a Strat has advanced and super advanced. There's replay, which is a hell of a game.
Oh, I talked about that too. I talked about replay in Action PC and
in Action PC. And Action PC, I think, does a very good job of being an advanced game without getting bogged down in the details of having to make every decision. And another, baseball mogul goes pitch by pitch.
Yeah, if you want to,
that goes there.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The one thing about that reminded me of APA and Pocket Pennant Run is, pitchers at APA are graded. There's no individual pitcher card. What you see for a pitcher card is how they would bat. Not very well. Enough 13s to make someone with triskaidekaphobia go into hiding forever. That's the fear of the number 13, for those that don't know that. And so, you're welcome. You're welcome, America and Zimbabwe. Now I lost. So, the way that Pocket Pennant Run grades batters reminds me a lot of how APA holds their pitchers. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so, again, the simplicity of all that.
Right. I was looking at the APA baseball master game because I was like, I might order the new books. I have the older books. I heard the newer books a little bit more updated and whatever. So I thought about maybe ordering 1980 and getting a new book and seeing if I would play some more APA baseball. Because I did. I had so much fun with it. And you hit the ground running. You really do.
And I think the newer cards, if it's been redone, will have the team name on them. You don't necessarily need to know.
Okay, good. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, because I didn't like that about that.
No, you didn't.
But anyway, I was on the Tabletop Baseball Plus YouTube channel watching him talk about the APA Master Game, and someone left a really good comment here, which kind of sums up everything to a point. And it's from SDGAKATBK. That's his.
Nestle's makes the very
That's
best.
right. I just wanted to get his name in here on YouTube. And his first sentence says it all. It comes down to a quicker game versus a higher level of detail. You want a quick game? Play basic. You want to be more involved in more detail? Play the Master Edition. And I think that sums up everything I'm going through right now. Is do I want a quick game? I play basic, and I can still enjoy it. Do I want more detail? Well, then I play, a Master or Advanced or whatever you will. Because I was looking into the Strat Advanced Baseball. I've been reading instructions on that. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of it, but it did get to a point where I started to get a little glossy-eyed because you lost me. There's a lot of things to remember. And even with Payoff Pitch, I went back to that. And as much as I enjoy that, I need to create a cheat sheet for myself because there's so many little things to remember. Things like if you're hitting off the tough, then it changes something. And if you're hitting off the wheelhouse, then it changes the runners going to different bases. So there's a lot of little things like that I need to put on like just one big cheat pad to say, okay, let me look at the cheat pad. Did something happen that's going to trigger an event in this game? And so, yeah, Payoff Pitch I found to be a little bit more complex than all the basic games that I was playing, only because of all the little nuances they put into the game. But I went on a baseball tear. I did a whole baseball video on it. And then this morning I did a video on mods because I was talking to some people about, modding the games and what things I would like to see. And one of the things that I got to was, like, you got the Strat Basic and the APA Basic. To jump to Strat Advanced and to APA Master, it's a pretty decent sized jump as far as I'm concerned. It's not a small increment. It's like, wow, you just opened up all these different things. You're looking at, numbers on runners and numbers on catchers and numbers on fielders.
There's math. Yeah,
there's a lot of math. And one thing that going back to that Master Game video on the Tabletop Baseball Plus channels. At the end of it, when he got done, he kind of said, boy, my head kind of exploded looking at the Master Game of APA. There's just so many checks and so much math to do during the game that he said it kind of took the basic is a little too basic for him, but the Master Game was just so full of.
It would be Strat Super Advanced. There's no intermediate for that, which is why there's so many modifications for APA. But once you get used to whatever it is that you want to go to that next step, you'll find that they play in the same time for you as a basic. Now, I do Super Advanced SADV Strat on the computer being the key word here, and I can play in 15, 20 minutes. Now, the computer's doing all the dice rolling, and you don't see every dice roll. Some of the dice rolls are hidden because in SADV Strat, you roll the 3 6-siders and a 20. And if the 20 is a 1, it could be a balk or a wild pitch or something. And so you don't see those rolls when you're playing on the computer.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Just like when you play Strat PC Hockey, there are certain things that are rolled behind the scenes that you just don't see, such as a penetration chart. When you roll that quote-unquote D30, the only time you see that D30's result is when you go into a must-pass situation. It won't let you penetrate. You have to pass. Anyway, and so it's worth it if you find an engine that you like, just to go through and bang that out, because your playing time, just as it does with any game, gets quicker and quicker and quicker the more routine it feels for you.
I actually went and tried the Appa Go because I was like, instead of spending the money on an Appa season, maybe I could just play online. That feels like it's about 75 or 80% of the way there.
That's about right.
It's a fun game, and it'd be great for a one-off. But boy, there's a couple.
I couldn't do a replay on it.
No, that's the thing. Is it feels like you're playing, like a Strat or an Action PC or a Baseball Mogul type of game, but you're not. You're in a web browser, and you got to do a lot of different things to make that work. You really do.
We go back to chess.com. That's all on a web browser. I really just when it's time for me to do that, I don't want to be online to do it. I don't care if I click online after I play and upload results. That I'm fine with. But as far as that's concerned, no.
Yeah, I wish they would make a software version of that would play like the Strat, that would keep the standings and all the stuff, and you could sim games. That would be ideal for that. But I did try that, and I wonder why I walked away from it. Now I remember why I walked away from it a little bit. And the last thing I played was some football. I finished my second season football game between the Houston Oilers and the Cleveland Browns in 1980. I was in the fourth quarter.
You got bent over the table by a straight-ahead kicker, didn't you?
Oh, Houston and Ken Stabler were up by 14 points. The Browns went down and scored, cut the lead to 7. Stabler get picked off midway through the fourth quarter. The Browns went right in and tied the game. We went to overtime. In overtime, Don Cockcroft, the Cleveland kicker, straight-on kicker, lines up for a 33-yard field goal. 11-52, it's good, and we go home. And I rolled 53. The kick was no good, so we played on. And then we went on, and then on the last drive of overtime, he lined up for I think it was a 40-yard field goal, or 42 or something like that. And I had no choice but to kick it because there was only 10 seconds left in overtime. And I kicked it, and he hit that. So Cleveland actually won by 3 over the Oilers. And I don't even know if they played overtime in 1980, but I played overtime. I played overtime just because I was just like having some fun. And that's a game that takes a long time. That's a long time to play. But you know something? That's one of those games that it's so enjoyable, and it's just
intuitive, isn't it?
I just took to that game. It's just one of those games that just it struck all the chords for me, and so when I can sit and play that using the Pro Football Help, and I can play a quarter and enjoy it and put it away, and then pull it out a week later and go back and play the second quarter. It's just that type of game for me. I don't feel like I need to finish it, and I'm in no hurry with it. It's so smooth. It's such a smooth playing game, and I really like that. So I'm going to be playing more of that. But that's about it. A lot of baseball and a little bit of football there with the second season, and I think that's about it. So should we get on to the topic at hand?
Yes.
So we're going to cross the streams today, cross the seasons, cross the decades. We're going to cross over the crossovers and talk a little bit about when you're playing teams from different seasons or different eras or different decades is what people like to do. I myself, I'm not a big fan of that yet, and I want to throw in that little yet caveat because at some point I might do that and enjoy the heck out of it.
I just think that with the pocket pennant run, it's just too easy.
It is. I myself, I like playing teams from the same season because I feel as though like they're all rated for that season, and you're going to get a pretty good representation of if those two teams played. I really like that, and I like playing the odd games like the Seattle Toronto that I just played, stuff like that, or the Boston California games in hockey. So I do like taking teams from the same season and play. I do, on occasion, like doing some kind of a fantasy draft with hockey where I get players from different eras playing in it, and I did that with I think most recently was Strat Hockey. And I've done it with OTP, Franchise Hockey Manager.
Hockey, yeah.
I've done that where it does the random debut where you can get a 21-year-old Gordie Howe and a 40-year-old Patrice Bergeron, because that's how the the random debut works. And I've done that in Franchise Hockey Manager and done a fantasy draft with that, and that's been a lot of fun. And most recently I did that with Strat, where I bought on the PC, I bought the Heroes and the Hall of Famer sets. I bought the 2 sets during the sale. And I handpicked guys that I liked and guys that I knew, and I threw them in a pot. And I had had a couple teams, 2, 3, 4 teams, whatever. I think I started with 2. And I let the computer do a draft. And I picked a couple of teams and I played them. I think it was you, Al Red Sox fan, and P-Jet. I think I had the 3 teams. And somehow I lost the season. I think I deleted it by mistake, or it disappeared, but it's not there, so I have to restart that. But that was about as close as I got to crossing the streams, is when I just pulled in Hall of Famers and heroes from different eras. So you had Wayne Gretzky playing with John Busick. You know, Al's team had Patrick Waugh and Ken Dryden in net. So you got goalies from different eras playing in there. So that's the closest I've come to cross-pollination.
Yeah.
You know, is playing players from different leagues, not full teams.
Not full teams. There are some, such as Al Red Sox fan, who really enjoy doing that. What if you took a healthy Tony Coglignero with the 67 Red Sox and played him against the 75 Reds or the 27 Yankees or the 1908 Cubs or whatever? When you do, you being the you out there, you know, any sort of golf replay or tennis replay or boxing replay, it really is. That's what you're talking about. It's the ultimate what if. You know, if you put Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, and Arnold Palmer on the first tee together, you know, whose cuisine is going to reign supreme? And those cards are what we call normalized. And you can give them 1960s distances with clubs, or you can give them 2010 distances with the clubs. They're going to play pretty even. There's just kind of some sort of magic in the recipe that does that. But I think it kind of goes back to, if you were lucky enough growing up or were an adult before the age of the PC that you could afford to buy the APA cards or the Strat cards from year to year, you had a whole library of stuff. And so, look, I'm going to pull out my 1968 St. Louis Cardinals. I'm going to play them against the 1976 Cincinnati Reds and that. And I think the basic answer is that, yes, some companies, we'll get into that, normalize so that you'll have some of the 68 effect, some of the 76 effect, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think anybody, when they first started doing it, really cared. It was Bob Gibson against Johnny Bench. It was Babe Ruth against, Whitey Ford. I mean, it just increases that. And one of the things that in Pocket Pennant run that you get every major league season from 1871. I mean, you're going back to before the National League was formed, and the Japanese league teams and the Negro league teams and some Korean teams. And so you can theoretically pull out the 2009 Yomiuri Giants and play them against the 1934 St. Louis Cardinals. And I've stressed this before. Once everything is written on the cards, on your lineup, however you're keeping score, and hit that button or roll that dice or however you decide to play, it's all a work of fiction anyway.
Yeah. And when we had Matt and Craig on from Pocket Pennant in a previous episode, I think it was Matt brought up the point when we were talking to him about that. He said he said, if you want to play the 1927 Yankees and the 1947 Cardinals or whatever it was, he says, you have to realize that would never, ever happen, and it's never going to happen. And right. So once you decide to play these two teams, it's pure fantasy and speculation, and I'm kind of paraphrasing what he kind of said.
Yes.
And I think that was the perfect answer for it, because I had a lot of questions for him, and I said, well, you got a team here that this, and this team is that. And he says it's pure speculation at this point. And you're playing the game, and you have to allow for some things to happen that might not normally happen. And you brought that up a lot with football, that if you were to take a team from the 50s and play a modern team in football, the modern team, they might not be as tough as nails as the guys from the 50s, but you can't kick a field goal in the 50s.
I think that would be.
So how do you account for that? So if you want to play the 1950 Browns and you want to play the 2007 New England Patriots or whatever, or the Ravens from this year, you got a guy that can kick from 66 yards. He's going to hit a field goal from 66 yards. Whereas if you're playing the Browns, if you want to be realistic, I don't think you can attempt a field goal from over 30 or 33 yards away because they just weren't hitting them from back then.
In Action PC, there is a setting in there, and so you can change the settings for a decade. So if you want to play a combination of the two, and so the 50s kicker gets some boosts, although I wouldn't use the Browns as the example because Lou Groza was a hell of a kicker, but I know where you're going with that. And it would take some away from the modern kicker. We're trying to normalize that a bit. And I mean, the running game, I think on a purely offensive level, I think you could go with the 50s, 60s football team, and they would reasonably match up well against a modern team. The older teams are going to run more. The newer teams are going to throw more because today's 5 or 6 yard routes are pretty much runs that are just completed at a higher level. What you're going to get into trouble with is the kicking. Could you take, let's say, the 62 Packers, swap them out with the current ones, although you probably wouldn't want to do that, or maybe last year's Packers, and would they win? I don't think they would go 0-16, but I do think if you took a great Green Bay Packer team of the past, as we said, 62, Dave, they might go 7-9.
Yeah, they might. But so
they could go 0-16. Yeah. You don't. I mean, it's just pure fantasy. It can be done.
And fantasy is a good word for it because you brought this up in the past. If you were to take basketball teams, if you were to take a team from the 60s or the 70s and play a modern team, but take away the 3-point line, or put it in for the older guys. I mean, again, you're not gonna. You have to realize that when you do this. Like I say, in order to normalize the field goal kick, it's going back to that George Blander might hit a 55-yarder if you're normalizing it, which he never could in real life. And that a modern kicker might struggle with a 45-yarder if you want to make it fair, because otherwise you can't have a fair fight in some of these things. You can't have the longer field goal kickers that we talked about, or the 3-point shooters, from today playing a team that's more, muck and grind down low with, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the hook shot, and all those guys, Walt with 100 points and stuff like that. It was a completely different game back then. Yeah. So once you play these, and I thought that Matt spelled it good, it's pure fantasy, it's pure fictional, it's pure speculation as to what's going to happen, and you have to allow for that. And you can't get upset if Blanda hits from 50 yards, even though I'm just throwing out his name, by the way. Maybe his longest was 45. It's like he'd never hit 50, 55. Well, if you want to play a modern team, then you have to fix some of these stats, because you can't tell the team from the 50s they can't try a field goal from over 30 yards. That's not fair.
Who's that kicker for Baltimore? Prater? See the one that hit the 66-yarder? The poor Lions.
I forget what his name now.
Two or three games where they thought they had it won at the end and get beat by a walk-off record field goal.
Well, that's twice, because Tom Dempsey was the first one.
That's right, 63.
Tom Dempsey did the first one, yep.
And Tom didn't even have all his toes.
No, he kicked that one long, and that one over. Back then, the goal line was at the field goal was at the goal line, so he kicked that from way back. I think he was on his 37.
His own 37, he hit that.
That was like Gus, the field goal kicking mule, kicking from all over the place.
To make the Baltimore kick, it was the first time that a successful record-breaking attempt or record-tying attempt wasn't done at altitude. The rest of them had been done in Denver.
Oh yeah,
And so let's not pretend that a 63-yarder in Denver is the same as a 63-yarder at New Orleans, which is below sea level.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yes, baseball I think leads itself to cross-pollination to some extent, because we have the most stats going back. Basketball, not assists, steals and blocks weren't an official stat until 72, 73. We can only guess what Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain did in those games. You trying to rate some teams for hockey
Hockey Blast. Yeah.
I always get them confused. And so we were talking about when did the NHL start keeping track of face-offs as an official stat. Well, I saw that the other day and just haven't had the chance to tell you. It's 97, 98.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I had to go in and put in face-off number for these guys, and I got nothing to work with.
Right.
And
it's all...
Yeah. And so how do you make a Cardinal face-off stat? So it said, well, just wing it. And I'm like, I don't know.
We finally now have, because some pro football enthusiasts did the research and went through the game film and the game logs, and we finally have stats back to, I think, 61. It didn't become an official statistic till the strike year, until 82. And so it's all on conjecture and legend for some of this stuff. Baseball was better about keeping that sort of thing. But do we really know how the 27 Yankees would do against the 68 Cardinals? How would Bob Gibson shut down that? I find what I do, I tend to stay away from franchise all-star teams, which is the ultimate mix of we're going to mix everybody up. You're going to get Reggie with the Yankees, and you're going to get Tom Seaver with the Mets, and blah, 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 blah. That when I've done those sort of things, the games either run with much too much offense, and you're saying to yourself, there's no way that Tom Seaver would ever give up 7 runs in 4 innings. Or you can't get a hit, and you say to yourself, there's no way that Babe Ruth would ever strike out 6 times to the Minnesota Twins bullpen, which we don't know, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy them with it. I mean, it's all fantasy. It's all fantasy.
I think if you can enjoy it on that level, if you don't go in expecting realistic results from their respective teams and players, then you might have more fun and just enjoying it as the what if. Okay, so this team from the 20s plays this team from the 70s, 80s, and 90s or whatever, a modern team. It's supposed to just be fun. And, I've seen, like I say, Al's done that in Action PC with some old hockey teams where he's played the 70 Bruins against the 84 Oilers or whatever it was. And it's 2 different decades. I mean, the 70s hockey, everybody was rough and tough and willing to fight.
Different style.
And you get in the 80s and 90s, and even today, and I'm not saying the guys aren't tough, but I'm saying it's more about skill and finesse than it is about grit and back.
Your third and fourth line skaters are as fast as your first and second line skaters were. Of course, the technology's better.
Oh, yeah.
The sticks are graphite and curved. Imagine trying to play, imagine Rocket Richard and Gordie Howe in the 50s with a curved stick.
Oh, yeah.
Or with the blade technology that exists today. Or in golf, Jack Nicklaus, who was the longest hitter of his day, but for his prime years, he's hitting a driver with a persimmon wood head. That's why they still call them woods, because they were wooden heads. You send him out there today with the Callaway Big Bertha 700cc of graphite. Oh my God. It's all club head speed because the club is lighter.
It is. You don't think about that with golf, but yeah, I went out golfing, I don't know, about 10 years ago, maybe longer. And this guy goes, hey, try hitting this. You're a big guy. Try hitting this club. And he pulled out this driver, and when he pulled the sock off, I was like, ooh. It was like, I looked at it, compared it to mine, and said, this thing looks like I'm hitting a Volkswagen Beetle. They're
about the size of that.
It was monstrous compared to my club. I felt like I had a car on the end of this club when I hit it. And so, yeah, the technology is nuts. And you think back to hockey, you think if the goalies had the equipment that they had today, I think they'd be a lot better because, back then, if you look at it back then, they tried to save everything with the leg pads because that was their best part of the equipment.
Well, if they fell to the ice, especially in the 40s, that was a penalty. You had to stay upright.
Yeah. Yep, you had to do that. So there's all these weird rules for that. And I remember the story that Bobby Hull told one time. He said he was playing against the Bruins, and he took a shot and was blocked, and it was on a power play. And he came back to him, and I don't know if he was 20, 25 feet out, and he wound up. And the defenseman kind of like got in front of him and turned. And as he looked up, he saw Chivas get behind the defenseman. And he said he almost laughed and missed the shot, and he shot it into the open net. And Chivas looked at him and shook his head and went, nope. You don't want to get hit with that stuff. And there was another story about Chivas that it was 6-3 with 30 seconds to go in a game. And I don't know if it was in Colorado or Kansas City or something. And the puck ended up going out to the slot, and the guy wound up, and Chivas skates out of the way and let him score. And he's like, it's 6-3 with 30 seconds left. I don't need to face this shot. I don't need to get this off the face or a break, And so, but imagine if they had the equipment today, they'd be dropping in the butterfly and taking that stuff off the head, and they wouldn't have a problem with that. So, again, when you play these things, you have to realize that, and the funny thing is last year, the last NHL I bought for the PlayStation, they had some old timers in there, and they had one goalie. And it was must have been Plant for the Canadians, and he didn't have a mask on, which I thought was weird that they would do that in an NHL hockey game. I know it's only a sim, but the idea being you don't want kids playing without masks, and I thought that was kind of weird they would put it in there. But in the game, he doesn't have a mask or a helmet or anything, and you can actually hit him in the face with a puck, and he just shrugs it off like he had a mask on. I thought that was really weird that they put that in the game. But yeah, they didn't have masks back in the day, and I'm not saying they weren't tough, because they were. But if they had all the equipment from today, imagine what they would do.
There's a clip of Game 7 at the Boston Garden, and it's the Leafs and the Bruins. When they come on to do the second or third period, because back then, even on the road games, they weren't showing you the first period, and they did it in Canada to protect the gate. You actually had to go to the game, but this was a game at the Garden, or the Boston Garden, and so they start the period, and the starter for Boston, whoever it was that particular year, got cut. Took a puck off near the eye or whatever, and there was no dressed backup goalie. So here is this Game 7 Stanley Cup semifinal and national TV, and of course, it's the equivalent of the World Series or the conference championships and all that. And so it's poor Foster Hewitt trying to kill time for 25 minutes because they know they can't get the other guy stitched. But because the backup goalie was eating hot dogs and drinking whatever the Bruins were selling at, their malty beverages, like, I'm not playing tonight. What the hell? And as they get him all bundled up to play, I mean, I just can't. But there's no face mask. He still comes out, and it just boggles the mind. The other one, commercial from the 90s when we first started getting this technology boom for golf, and it's a funny ad, and the you want sweet spot? Well, here's a driver that's made from a pure lollipop. It's all sweet spot. And he swings and go, oh my God, I can't see how far that went, blah, 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 blah. And they pull back in the camera, and because it's melted candy, the ball is stuck to the driver.
That's funny. But yeah,
it's all about theater of the mind.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's entertainment purposes only, and you can't go into it thinking that an older team is going to play like the older team and generate those same stats against a newer team. In football, it's more of a ground game back in the day, and now it's more a passing game. And so it wouldn't be a fair fight with an older team just because of how they played, where the more run and less kicking field goals, where the modern teams, the West Coast offense and hitting those field goals from 50 and 60 yards.
PC can kind of adjust for that.
Yeah, and so games have to do that. Yeah. And I'm glad that they do that. And one of the things I asked Matt from Pocket Pennant Run, I says, well, you're going to do some minor league baseball. I says, in theory, any minor league team that you rate should lose to a major league team because it's minors versus majors, right? All right, well, I'll tell you what, I'll bet your house against my house, and I'll take the major league team. You know what I mean? I get that there's outliers.
Best of 7, I would, sure.
But I mean, I get there's outliers, but I mean, and so I said, how would you do that? How would you, so if you're rating the best minor league team, and against all their other minor league teams, they would be A's and B's, let's say. Well, none of those guys would be A's and B's in the major league.
It's one of the things that cropped up when 2nd and 10 came out, because the first iteration of that came with everyone from 1950. And so there were all 10 AFL seasons and all 10 NFL seasons. And there wasn't a Super Bowl, obviously, until after the 66 season. So people went back and tried to recreate what would have been those first 5 years and put a Super Bowl. And were amazed that the AFL teams were beating the NFL teams. The 63 Chargers had an incredible offense. The 63 Bears, their defense was stingier than George Halas ever was. I mean, they really were. And on paper, the Bears should have wiped the floor with the Chargers. It was probably when the Jets beat the Colts in Super Bowl III, that was the first time that they probably were on even terms. But certainly not in 63. No way, no how. The Chargers might have given the Bears a game, but the Bears should have easily beaten the Chargers. Well, why are the Chargers beating the Bears? This should never happen. And it really shouldn't. I mean, the Bears would have been 18, 20-point favorites. And that was, because we didn't adjust for the different leagues. Yes, it's pro football, but there was the NFL and AFL were not on the same level the first few years of the old AFL. And so, no, you can't play them that way. So they came up with strength of schedule or strength of team or whatever in one of the versions. So if you did that, it would be more of a fair fight. There would be some adjustments. Yeah. So that the massive offense the Chargers would put up would not just steamroll the Bears.
Yeah. I guess you really have to go into it in a certain frame of mind. And because there's no right way to do it, because you would never know what would happen. You can speculate all day long with the different rules and the different equipment and just how things were so different, especially the further back you go. It's all like it's a pure fiction, as you call it, pure fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's just supposed to be something to talk about. More it is than to say, I wonder how many home runs Babe Ruth would hit against Roger Clemens. Well, you'll never know. You'll never have that answer. So no matter what answer you get, it's wrong because we'll never know.
OOTP does a very good job of trying to normalize that. So if you take Babe Ruth Yankees versus Roger Clemens Yankees, for instance, there is a way to do it behind the scenes that can kind of, it's a little bit 20s, it's a little bit 2000s. But again, it is, how do you know? You don't have a distinct answer. You can play around with some things, but it's never going to be, you just don't know. And it starts fights and it ends fights, but it probably starts more fights than anything. Would again, in a 7-game series between, let's say, now it's Worcester, the Red Sox and the Woo Sox, I would probably take the Boston team in 5 or 6. But to say that Worcester wouldn't take one game out of that, it would be like the Stanley Cup Finals when the North Stars played the Pens or when Vancouver played the Islanders back there. Like, there's no way that the North Stars or Vancouver in those 2 respective years were even close to the best teams in their respective conferences. They were both under 500 teams. But they got through the labyrinth and made the final. And I think, did Minnesota take a game off of Pittsburgh that year?
I don't remember.
Anyway, but you know where I'm going with that in a 7-game series, a chance of one team that's clearly
I think they did. I think they did win at least one, maybe 2. Yeah, I think it did. I think it went 6.
Okay. But yes, I could see a AAA team taking 1 or 2. Yeah. Not 7.
But there was a time that I think that the best college team took on a pro football team at one time. And they only did it for a handful of years. I think it was in the 70s. And the college football team got smoked every time.
Oh, it was the college football all-stars.
Maybe that's what it was.
Playing against an exhibition game against the defending Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, and they got smoked.
And it just was not a fair fight. Because every once in a while, if, the Browns or the Lions or whoever the dog team is, the Jacksonville Jaguars, goes 0-16. Yes, you could get Alabama or the defending college national champions. And so what would the spread be? And it's always at least 2 touchdowns for the pro team. As good as the college teams are, No.
Yeah. Well, you got to realize that team that went 0-16 in the NFL was playing NFL teams, and the college teams that went 16-0 was playing college teams, and they're playing, Mississippi Backwater Tech State.
That's right.
So those are kind of cupcake wins right there. So it's not a fair fight. You're not playing against the same teams. You're not playing.
It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Oh, it is. It's a heck, and that's what this whole thing's about. It's all about fun, and you're playing. A fantasy game, and this team and that team and the other team, and it's all about just talking and making a story out of it. And I guess my thing would be is to not read too much into it, and to not expect things to work out as you might think, because again, you have to normalize and you have to bump some teams up and bring some teams down. Otherwise, you're not going to get the fair fight, and it's not going to be fun to watch. So. But anyway, so we'd like to know your thoughts on crossing the streams, crossing over from different decades, different eras. What has been your results when you play teams from the way back to teams from modern day, or just anything like that? You take the best team from this year, the best team from this year, and you play them. What are some of your results? What are some of your expectations when you play this? How do you go into this? How do you mentally prepare to deal with when you're playing those two teams? I'd like to know everybody's thoughts on that, because I haven't really done it yet. And for some of the reasons I talked about is that I wouldn't get the results I would normally get if I played two teams from different decades, because one or the other would perform vastly different because of the rules that you'd have to set by that. And so anyway, we want to know what you think about that. So without further ado, let's wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
Living by the numbers. This was episode 119 of the Digital to Dice podcast. I recorded this on January 12th, a very cold January 12th here in 2022. Ways to get a hold of us. digitaltodice.com is the website. 978-751-DICE. 978-751-3423 is how you can text us. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. And facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice is how you can get a hold of us on Facebook. And we've had a couple people that have supported the channel through PayPal and Venmo in the last couple of weeks. And I just want to say thank you so much for your donations, no matter how big or how small. It helps pay some of the bills over here that come due at the end of the month. So I want to say thank you to the guys that have contributed to the show and the nice notes that you've left. There's been a couple of people that I have no way to contact you. I saw the donation come in, and there's no email or any way to contact you, and I really don't want to read your name out on the show. So just let you know that we did get it, and I just want to say thank you. And I would get back to you with an email, and I usually do if there's an email on that. And if you did get us all digitaltodice@yahoo.com, just send us an email. We can send you a personal thank you that way as well. And to the guy who sent me the Pai Gow Poker email today, that was hilarious, because I talked about Pai Gow Poker last night on my baseball broadcast, and he said that come up in his feed, and he sent me a funny link about a lady that won a lot of money playing Pai Gow Poker in Vegas. So shout out to you as well. So anyway, I'm Dave.
I'm Ron.
Talk to everybody later.
Bye-bye.